Hi, I'm Ruby Jean, and I am a firm believer that everyone is a reader. You just haven't found the right book yet. If that's you, it's your lucky day because I've created a step-by-step guide on how to become a reader. Also, if you stick to the very end, I have a whole list of book recommendations for new readers. There are two main excuses I hear when people tell me that they're not readers. They don't have time, or they just don't enjoy reading. So let's just get the I don't have time thing out of the way because I feel like this one can be shut down fairly quickly. I'll tell you right now, setting aside time to read is crucial. I am a busy woman and I do not have a lot of time to read. I have a full-time job. I am a wife. I am a mother to a little fur baby. I do stuff with my friends. I have a pretty busy social calendar per se. But not only do I read a lot. I read enough to have a whole YouTube channel based off of books and reading. Let that sink in. And I'll tell you my trick, my little hack. It's not that I set aside hours a day to read. I set aside 30 minutes. 30 minutes. That's literally it. I wake up, I turn on the coffee pot, and I read for 30 minutes. And I'll tell you right now, most days I only read for those 30 minutes and that's it. You would be surprised how much reading I get done. So just set aside a little bit of time for you and your book to just mingle. Also, notice I said you and your book, not you, your book, and your phone. Second tip, put your phone away. Put it on Do Not Disturb. Even the biggest readers that I know, including myself, will set aside some time to read and end up scrolling through TikToks and Reels for the entire time they set aside to read. Just do yourself a favor, put the phone away. Last but not least, go check the screen time on your phone. Go to the settings on your phone, pull up screen time, and tell me how many hours are in your daily average. You mean to tell me that you don't have 30 minutes to read? Who knows, maybe you're even extreme like me and you do a challenge. I will say this challenge is very eye-opening, and it's so eye-opening I've done it 3 times. I've swapped out my daily average screen time for reading. I read multiple books a week. There was even one day I read a whole book in a single day. That is how much time I was spending on my phone. All right, now let's jump to those who say they just don't enjoy reading. I can guarantee you're doing it wrong. And for some people who are like, you can't do reading wrong, you're just reading a book. False. Here are some things that you can do to make reading more enjoyable and also make sure that you're selecting the right book. To make reading more enjoyable, you need to activate all 5 senses. Let's start with sight. Lighting is everything. You need to make sure that you have enough light to see, but not so much light that it's gonna tire your eyes out. For me, I prefer reading in front of a window and getting natural light, or just turning on an overhead lamp in a dark room so you have like a little bit of soft light. Next, taste. Just like you would for any movie or TV show, have a snack or a drink with you. For me, I'm a beverage girly, so I always have a hot tea or a hot coffee with me whenever I'm reading a book. And then of course there's touch. And I think the obvious ones here are wear something comfortable or sit somewhere comfortable, obviously. But I'm gonna take this even further. If you're a new reader and you're new to reading, what you need to figure out first thing is, are you a physical book person or are you an ebook person? Some people just don't enjoy holding a paper book. For me, clearly I enjoy paper books, but for some people they would prefer to read on like an iPad, or you could even read on your laptop or phone. Although I wouldn't recommend phone because then we get back into the whole distraction thing. Probably definitely aim for computer or tablet. Then of course there's smell. This one's more of a bonus. This one isn't really necessary, but hey, it doesn't hurt anyone to burn a candle or diffuse some essential oils. For me, I personally just inhale the steam from my coffee. Then there is sound. I would argue that this one's actually the most important of the 5 senses when it comes to making reading more enjoyable. 3 things to consider when activating sound for your reading experience. First thing to consider. Do you need dead quiet, or do you need to be in a place where there's some steady background sounds like a library or a coffee shop? If you love music like me and you always have to have music on in the background, here's a fun little tip for you. Open up your music streaming app, go to the search bar and type in reading and then the title of whatever book you're reading. And unless you're reading some super obscure and not well-known book, there's gonna be a bunch of fan-made playlists where the music matches the vibes of what you're reading. It really can get you into a book. I'm personally a huge fan of this method and I do it with almost every single book that I read. Now, this next one is actually a very controversial tip, and I'm sure there's a lot of readers out there who are gonna curse me for even suggesting this. But if you really struggle with focus, like you cannot for the life of you read a page and then tell me what you just read, listen to the audiobook while you read. Put an audiobook on maybe ×2 speed, play it in your headphones and then have a physical book in front of you and just follow along with your eyes. I have even used this tip when I was in a book slump or when I was really struggling to get through a book. This doesn't mean that you have to buy a physical book and an audiobook. I could make a whole separate video on how to read for free. It does not have to be some huge expensive hobby. First of all, go to the library to get a physical book. Library card is free most places. Second of all, if you have a library card, you can download the app Libby, tell them what library you're from, and give them your library card info, and you have access to thousands upon thousands of free ebooks and audiobooks. Now let's talk about the most exciting part of this video, book selection. Why does it matter and how in the world do you do it as a new reader? For me, reading is like TV shows and books. If you don't love it, you're not gonna want to stick around and keep watching. Books are the same. If you're not a reader, I can almost guarantee you at least have a couple TV shows or movies that you've been really into and enjoyed. So let's use that to decide what kind of books you should be reading. First of all, pay attention to the genres of the TV shows and movies that you watch and pick a book from that genre. If you like 1990s rom-coms, you should read a contemporary romance. If you love fantasy, you should read an epic or a dark fantasy book. If you like crime shows or even true crime podcasts, you should read some murder mystery books. Of course, if you like watching documentaries, you should read a nonfiction or a biography. Along the same lines, another tip is to read a book that one of your favorite movies or TV shows was based off of. Some really good examples of this off the bat are Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings. I feel like those are some of the most obvious ones. You could even fit Star Wars in this category. There are lots of Star Wars books, although the books were definitely written afterwards, but you catch my drift. If there's a story you already know you love, try giving that book a chance. It's really fun, especially if you're super into the movie, because oftentimes the book has more detail and even more scenes that the movie or TV show doesn't have. So you're actually getting bonus content. But if you're more of a TV show person, the ones that come right off the top of my head are The Summer I Turned Pretty, To All the Boys I Loved Before, and Bridgerton. Now, some other little miscellaneous tips and tricks that you just need to consider when picking a book. Keep it short. I'm not even kidding. Under 400 pages. If you're a new reader and you're trying to get into reading, you have no business reading a book above 400 pages. I'd even argue 350 pages is a lot. Next is look for books that are described fast paced. This is going to be really important because books that are described fast-paced means they don't have those moments where nothing's really happening and the plot kind of drags and gets super boring. Fast-paced books means there's always something going on at all times and it's going to keep you super engaged. Now, this is a tip that I think is really understated and underestimated, and I cannot stress it enough. Do not take long breaks in between your reading sessions. The longer breaks you take between those reading sessions, the more you're going to forget. At a certain point, you're going to forget so much of the plot that you're not even going to be interested in picking up the book, and inevitably you're going to lose interest and never finish it. And that's probably not going to help your self-esteem as a new reader. Just a thought. And now for the most exciting part, which is my personal recommendations for new readers. Obviously, I already said this one before, Harry Potter, but a reason why I'm suggesting this that you might not have considered is that the author J.K. Rowling originally started writing these books for middle school kids. So the first 3 books are actually fairly young and easy to follow along with, but once you hit book 4 and above, they're actually written more for adults. So as you grow as a reader, these books will grow along with you. This next one is honestly such an underestimated book series, but if you are a sucker for reality TV and drama, you need to read The Selection. It's literally The Bachelor, but The Bachelor is a prince and all the contestants are a bunch of girls throughout the kingdom, all vying to become the next queen. So it gets catty and it's so good. Honestly, I'm not even that big of a fan of reality TV and I'm obsessed with these books. Next, The Hunger Games. I feel like this got a lot of people into reading who weren't readers back when I was in high school. Also, chances are you've seen the movie and you already have really strong visuals, so you won't have to work hard to imagine what you're reading. You can just sit back and enjoy it. I think this one will come as a surprise to no one who's watched any of my videos, but A Court of Thorns and Roses. Not only is this book really good for hopeless romantics, but on top of that, this is probably one of the best series to introduce yourself to fantasy if that's a genre you want to try to dip your toe in. Next, let's jump into Stephanie Garber books because I think she's one of the most underestimated authors of all time and she's in my top 3 favorite authors. She writes the most fast-paced, most entertaining, most aesthetically pleasing books. It's literally, I could make a whole video on Stephanie Garber alone. Phenomenal. She has 2 trilogies, and they actually take place in the same world back to back in the timeline. The first one is Caraval, which is basically The Greatest Showman meets The Prestige, and then there's Once Upon a Broken Heart, which is like an Alice in Wonderland, be careful what you wish for, fairy tale gone wrong kind of storyline. And honestly, it's so good. I cannot stress to you enough how amazing these books are. Now, if you really want to be entertained and you're not afraid of bigger books, even though I discourage jumping into bigger books, but if you're into sci-fi, honestly, these are some of the best sci-fi books I know. There are also fairy tale retellings following the stories of Cinderella, Little Red Riding Hood, Rapunzel, and Snow White. That's what it is. Half the story takes place in space after a worldwide pandemic. Very niche. I've never read a book series like them, but very engaging, very fast-paced, and very good if that's what you're into. Now, if all of these recommendations are stressing you out because you really do not want to pick up a series, if you want a standalone, I highly recommend Dial A for Aunties. This book is so good. It is super funny. It's an accidental murder romantic comedy. I don't know how else to describe it. It's honestly so stinking good. Honestly, I could go on forever, but these are definitely my top recommendations for new readers. And if you're not a new reader who's just kind of watching to be supportive of my channel, first of all, thank you. Second of all, why don't you just include some more titles in the comments that you would recommend new readers to read? But for now, that's all, and I will see you next Monday.